everybody. Today we'll be starting with this new section of the Bhagavad Gita, starting with chapter 7. Krishna starts talking about, as we mentioned earlier, that Bhagavad Gita is divided into 3 parts. And the first 6 chapters, they talk about karma. And they also talk about who am I, basically. They're focusing on us. The middle 6 chapters, which are the most important chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, 7 to 12, they talk about bhakti, and they also talk about the Supreme, the knowledge of the Supreme. So this is what we are starting today. We'll focus. The 7th chapter is titled as Knowledge of the Absolute, and it will progress into bhakti, because in the end of the 6th chapter, Krishna recommends this bhakti yoga. So now he will start describing what this bhakti yoga is, and before he describes that, he will describe himself first. And because when we know a person, then only we can connect with him in love. So first we need to have knowledge about the person, get to know each other. And the last section is, of course, jnana, or knowledge of this material world, 13 to 18.
Sometimes it's also described that, you take something that is of the greatest value and you put it in the center. So it's also the most confidential section of the Vedas as well as the Bhagavad Gita, and hence you see that it is sandwiched between karma and jnana. So bhakti is sort of in between. And then this is the other way in which the Bhagavad Gita is also divided in 3 different distinct categories. So from chapter 1 through 6, it's about me. So we talked about how we are not this body, we are not this mind, how we are a spark of pure consciousness. And that was from chapters 1 through 6. And now we are entering into the most confidential section, which is about God, who God is. And he himself, Krishna himself, is going to talk about himself and say, okay, how we can approach him and how he is visible in this world, right? So it's a very
What are his qualities, what are his opulences? So just getting to know Krishna all around in different ways. So let's jump into the chapter 7. And it starts with this very important verse where Krishna is talking about hearing. So we can recite this verse and read the translation. Maya satta manaha partha yogam yunjan mad ashrayaha asamshayam samagramam yatha gyashashi tashinu. So the last 2 words, tashinu, are the most important ones. Oops.
Can you just see things? Can we go up? Just check the...
There's no chat.
There is.
It just flashes.
No, there is. Okay.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Now hear, O son of Pritha, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt." So he's describing bhakti yoga indirectly. He says by practicing yoga, which means the bhakti yoga, which entails practicing that yoga in full consciousness of Krishna, and with mind attached to him, with mind attached to Krishna. So through the process of bhakti, Krishna is revealing that you can know me in full.
Free from doubt.
Free from doubt, because we have so many doubts. And the qualification is that hearing. Krishna says, now hear, because we want to know about God, and the best person to tell us about God is God himself. And that's why Krishna is saying that you will not get this knowledge anywhere else, because I know myself the best, and I'm going to tell you, I'm going to share with you all the knowledge about myself.
Also, I was thinking that many times, when it comes to spiritual life, we talk about having faith, right? And that how we have to approach God through faith. And while faith is definitely, the gradual evolution or the progression of bhakti is the full development of our faith. But in reality, bhakti is not just a belief system. It is by, just like if I wanted to know, any one of you, for example, and if I hung around with you and I spent time and I heard from you and directly associated with you, then I would know you. So then there is no more, I don't need a third person or a third party certification that, hey, do you know this person? So you know that person. So in the same way, this power of hearing is so amazing and so unique that one directly, by the process of sound, one directly associates with the supreme divine person, and in that way one is freed from all doubts, because now we know that person intimately and personally.
Yeah, that's what we're doing in our chanting. We're also hearing the mantra. when we are chanting. So that hearing is the centerpiece of knowing Krishna.
And actually, our entire process of getting knowledge is based on this hearing process. So we wanted to spend some time and see how this hearing is the Veda. Another word for the Veda is also Shruti, right? So it's coming up. Okay.
Second verse. So what we thought that we'll integrate the verses along with our presentation, so we don't have to go back and forth. And as the verses come, we can elaborate with supporting material. Jnanam teham savijnanam idam vakshami sheshataha yadgyatva neha bhuyo anyat gyatavyam avashishyate.
I shall now declare unto you in full this knowledge, both phenomenal and numinous. This being known, nothing further shall remain for you to know. So this is, again, there are two words that are being used here, right? Jnanam and Vijnanam. So Jnanam is, again, knowledge which is theoretical, that I hear from somewhere. And Vijnanam means that I have my own personal realization, or I see that knowledge, right? Vijnanam is practically realized knowledge. So both.
And then it also means, phenomenal means the knowledge of this material world, and numinous means the knowledge of the spiritual realm. So Krishna is saying that when you hear from me this knowledge, it is not just spiritual knowledge, but it is knowledge about the complete reality, both material and spiritual. So in other words, what he's saying, that when we connect with this reality, we know about everything, and means how to take care of our material life, how to take care of our this world, how to take care of everybody, how to make the journey to the spiritual realm. So everything is contained in this knowledge. It's not lacking in anything. Sometimes people think of spiritual knowledge or spiritual life means only a part of my life, and then the rest of the things I have to figure out from some other place. But by being expert in this knowledge, one becomes expert in every aspect of life.
And the reason is, a lot of times people like to put things in categories and boxes, right? So we say this is spiritual knowledge and this is material knowledge, but actually it is described in the ancient Bhakti, wisdom text, that actually matter is simply a shadow of spirit. So if you know one, then you know the other, right? Because they're actually they're connected. They're not disconnected from each other. And we'll talk more about energy today. Then
Yeah, and sometimes we think that okay, I have some knowledge about matter, but we really have very little knowledge about matter and how it impacts us, and what are the real qualities of matter. People are still struggling to find out. So when we take this approach, we actually top-down approach, we actually really learn about matter in the most relatable way and in most effective way. So this is something that we discussed earlier, that how do we know about anything, and we talked about direct sense perception, speculation, and shabda. So in order to know about anything, but especially if you want to learn about the absolute truth, then one has to rely the most on shabda, which means sound, or hearing from an expert. And Krishna is the best expert, because he knows about everything. Yeah, so this is what Krishna is emphasizing here, that you hear from me.
So here is something, we wanted to bring out this power of hearing, because hearing, it's described that, even in the Vedic text, we hear about how there are babies who are growing up in the womb, and then they hear the mother is reading something, or he hears some sound and, learns something in the womb. And it's something that is very much part of a lot of the yoga stories. Like, for example, Arjuna's own son, right, Abhimanyu, he heard, some aspect of military art, while he was in the womb. And then when he came out, he was knowledgeable about it. And sometimes we just dismiss that as like, yeah, right. But actually, this is a study. They're finding out that babies actually learn even before they're born. So maybe we can just watch it's a TED Talk. So we'll just watch very briefly, and then we'll continue on. Let it.
But one thing they're really good at is sucking. Researchers take advantage of this fact by rigging up two rubber nipples, so that if a baby sucks on one, it hears a recording of its mother's voice on a pair of headphones, and if it sucks on the other nipple, it hears a recording of a female stranger's voice. Babies quickly show their preference by choosing the first one. Scientists also take advantage of the fact that babies will slow down their sucking when something interests them and resume their fast sucking when they get bored. This is how researchers discovered that after women repeatedly read aloud a section of Dr. Seuss's The Cat in the Hat while they were pregnant, their newborn babies recognized that passage when they heard it outside the womb. My favorite experiment of this kind is the one that showed that the babies of women who watched a certain soap opera every day during pregnancy recognized the theme song of that show once they were born.
It goes on and on.
Fetuses are even learning about the particular language that's spoken
Oh yeah, this
in
is
the
funny.
world that they'll be born into. A study published last year found that from birth, from the moment of birth, babies cry in the accent of their mother's native language. French babies cries end on a rising note, while German babies end on a falling note, imitating the melodic contours of those languages. Now, why would this kind of fetal learning be useful? It may have a
So this really interesting TED talk, but again, something that for thousands of years, in India, even when as soon as a mother gets pregnant, then she's told that now that the baby is in the womb, please read the Bhagavad-Gita, please read all these.
Read loudly.
Read loudly. And I remember when I was carrying Nimai, during those 9 months, I remember reading the Bhagavad-Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and it does have an impact on the child because the vibration is being received, and as we can see that babies are actually hearing even before they are born. And interestingly, this is they say that it's the first sense to develop, and it's also the last sense to leave a person when they die.
evolved to
Oh, this is another video. We don't have time perhaps to watch this, but we just collected. Sometimes we just like to collect videos. Is that coming up, that article, or because I think we should talk about how there's also a study. There was a recent study which showed that how when a person dies, they found out that they're still able to hear. So the sense of hearing is the last sense. Okay, so there's an article that, and I think we forgot to put it on there, but that's the last sense to go. So it shows that there's a reason why we have one mouth and two ears, and we can close our mouth, but we really cannot close our ears. So the idea being, this process of hearing is actually a very, very significant aspect of our being. And Prabhupada would often talk about how do you wake up a sleeping person. And he would say that the sense that can wake up a sleeping person is really through the ears. And so you have an alarm clock, because when you're sleeping, everything else, your eyes are closed and you're not really aware of any other thing. But what comes and wakes us up is the sound.
And this is the same like when a soul is kind of sleeping in this darkness of ignorance about its reality, and the sound that can wake this soul up from this darkness is from the sleep, is this spiritual sound vibration. So and the quality of our hearing actually impacts who we are, what are our choices, what are our preferences, how much further we go in life. Everything is kind of determined by the quality of our hearing.
So hearing is also not just it's not like there's only not one kind of hearing. And we actually there is this very famous court advisor. He used to be in South India, and his name is Tenali Raman, and he's very, very wise person, and a lot of stories around him. Well, one time there was this one person who came to the court and said he introduced like 3 different dolls, and they looked identical to each other.
So he threw a challenge at the king. He said that I've heard lots of stories about your court, that it's filled with wise people. So I have a challenge for you. I have these 3 dolls who look identical, and if anybody in your court can find out what the differences are, then I'll give all my wealth to your court. Otherwise, he said, you have to give me a certain amount of wealth.
And also give a certificate signing that
my court is filled with fools.
Yeah, my court is filled with fools. And so Tenali Raman actually is from this court, and he obviously took up this challenge. Everybody was trying to figure out, because they, as you can see, they look identical. And so then he demonstrated through this little, so we'll watch it. It's kind of cute. Not the whole thing, right? Yeah, they're have to turn on the music, the volume.
Should I?
Yeah. Turn on the volume. So he puts actually a wire inside each one, and as you can see, inside the ear. So the first one, can you just pause? So as you can see, the first one, when he put the wire through one of her ears, the wire actually came directly out of her mouth. The second one, the wire went inside one ear and came out the other. And the third one is supposed to be the wire goes inside her ear and goes into her heart, right?
So, what do you guys think each of these three dolls represent? And then we can explain if you guys want to take a shot at it for a minute.
Can you stop share maybe?
Yeah. If you already know the answer, then don't speak it out.
Yeah. This quiz is only for those that don't know.
Or who want to think and
Yes, babies also recognize the father's voice. Yes. What do you think those dolls represent? Can you go to the gallery view? First doll, and you repeat what you hear. Second doll.
Tapas Prabhu is wanting.
You hear, but you
Tapas
hear, but you
Prabhu
don't
speaking.
listen. Oh, okay, sorry. Go ahead, Tapas Prabhu. We can't hear you. Your voice is...
okay, maybe you can type.
Maybe you can type Tapas Prabhu. Third doll, you hear, listen and understand. Nice.
This very nice understanding.
First doll, mental speculator. Second doll, fruitive worker. Third doll, devotee. Naji. Well, the first doll, it goes inside the ear and comes out of the mouth. The second doll
Comes out of the other ear.
Comes out of the other ear. Third doll goes into the heart.
Second doll could also be considered as a married person, right?
Amrita, very good. The first one is talking more than listening. The second one is not really listening. Third takes everything to heart. Yeah. Yeah. That was sort of the Tenali Raman's explanation of the three doll was that the first one, you hear...
He gave two explanations.
Huh?
He gave two explanations.
Oh, he gave two explanations?
Yeah.
Okay.
And both these explanations are wonderful. Actually, I like these explanations more than what Tenali Raman gave. He actually gave that the first goes to the ear, comes out of the mouth. So this is a person who cannot keep a secret. The second one goes to the ear and then comes out of the other ear.
That's kind of like what happens when you talk to your teenage son, right?
Yeah.
Goes out on the other side.
And the third one is somebody who goes to the heart, which means he can keep a secret, and then he gives another interpretation.
But for us, what that would mean is that a hearing that, when we hear, we're able to take it in our heart. And I think Delia mentioned that, that we're able to absorb it, understand it, reflect on it, and, ruminate on it. So that's the best kind of hearing.
And the first one is just hearing and repeating it without really understanding it or thinking it to heart or not applying it. So that is just like theoretical knowledge. You don't really bring it in your life. And then that could mean people who study, like somebody could memorize a recipe book and recite it verbatim, but they have never cooked any single recipe from it. So that's like that person who hears and just talks about it, but doesn't really know it. So anyways, the quality of hearing is what we just wanted to bring to your attention here. Let me go back to the sharing. Because
when Krishna is saying just here, within those two words, Tat Shrinu, there's a whole world inside of that. Like, what does it mean to hear? And, how can I know everything just by the process of hearing? Yeah. And our entire process is actually based on this hearing.
And this is again emphasizing this quality of hearing. We can see how Arjuna heard the Bhagavad-Gita from Krishna on the battlefield in less than 2 hours actually. And he actually understood everything and realized everything in those 2 hours. And his grandson Parikshit, when he was cursed to die in 7 days, he heard the whole Bhagavatam, which is 18,000 verses. So Bhagavad Gita is 700 verses and Bhagavatam is 18,000 verses. So he heard that in the 7 days and completely realized. He became completely fearless from death, and he left his body. So uh, why? And then we have read the Bhagavad Gita maybe sometimes or one time, and Bhagavatam also, but we don't realize it because I guess what's the reason? The reason is we are not desperate to hear it.
So this was a question that was asked. I didn't realize this is a Socrates story also, because I'd actually heard this in a different context. So this was a question that was asked to Socrates, that what is the difference? Like, why is it that even though I'm hearing, but I don't understand the spiritual knowledge. And I think the other story that I had heard was, how can I really understand God?
Yeah.
Right? So then what Socrates did was, he took this man and he dunked him inside this river. And so when he was inside the river, and then he brought him out, and he said, how desperate were you for oxygen, right? Or air? And he said, more than my life. He said, yes. He said, when we develop such a strong desire to actually understand and to hear, that's when the spiritual knowledge will become revealed to us. Right now we are hearing, but then our mind is in so many other places, because we are not really hungry for it. So
Our ears are not really open.
and on that same note, actually, there's another story where there was this one person who went to his teacher, and he said that what do I do? Like, I come every week for these Bhagavad Gita classes. Like, well, you guys could say, we come every day, but I don't see too much transformation within my heart. And so there are two stories connected to it. One is, this homeopathic doctor says, well, just like, they have these little pills. And so, like you put that pill in a little bit of that, the medicinal liquid, and then it takes it in a little bit, and then you put it again, and then you do it again, and then you do it again. You do it repeated number of times, and that's how, it becomes a potent medicine. So in the same way, it may feel like we are hearing it, and yet nothing is really happening. But in reality, it's like one drop at a time. It's entering our consciousness and purifying us.
So this just want to mention that again, that the whole path of Vedic learning is based on hearing. It's called Shrota Pantha, which means the path of proper hearing. The whole Vedic paradigm. The Vedas were never actually written down. They were passed down from teacher to the student in the form of oral recitation. And the teacher would recite the lesson once, and then the students, they were so eager to hear, they would memorize it in just one listening. Like Sukadeva Goswami, who was the speaker of Bhagavatam, he heard the whole Bhagavatam, 18,000 verses, from his father just once, and then he just memorized it and then also realized the whole knowledge in one shot. So this path is called Shrota Pantha, the path of hearing. And you'll see that in Bhagavad Gita and in all the Vedic scriptures, this word Anushrinu is mentioned, that whenever they mention any new fact, they will, the teacher, like Sukadeva Goswami, for example, whenever he mentions any new idea or knowledge, he said, this is how I have heard it from the previous teachers. So Anushrinu means I'm just repeating what I have heard. And the whole Vedas, they are also known as Shabda Brahma, which means the Vedic knowledge itself is the manifestation of the absolute truth in the form of sound or recorded sound. So it's all about hearing in that sense, and that's why Krishna is saying that Shinu.
Just like, in this Srimad Bhagavatam, he's saying, I heard him with rapt attention, and thus I learned it. And another place, Prabhupada also taught us, trying to find that, where he says that you can actually hear in a rapt attention when your mind is pure, right? And your mind is pure when your actions are pure, right? And your thoughts are pure. So that is the way of actually rapt hearing and that's the reason why we follow a disciplined process, because we want to purify the mind and our senses and our habits and our thoughts, and then we can actually hear with rapt attention.
And this is how Prabhupada, this is a very interesting story about Prabhupada, that when Prabhupada was young, he was visiting, he was attending lectures given by his spiritual teacher, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati in Vrindavan, and he would go and listen every day. And but some of other disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta, they would actually not attend the lecture, but rather go and visit some temples. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he pointed out that what can you see with your eyes? You cannot really see God with your eyes. Even if you go to a temple and then try to see the deity form, you won't be able to see anything with your eyes. You have to be able to learn to see God with your ears. And he praised Prabhupada that he likes to hear, and that's why he's every day here, present to hear.
So this is the section I was talking about from Srimad Bhagavatam. So here in the purport, Prabhupada says, the secret of knowing Bhagavatam is mentioned here. No one can give rapt attention who is not pure in mind. No one can be pure in mind who is not pure in action. No one can be pure in action who is not pure in eating, sleeping, fearing, or mating. But if somehow or other, if someone hears with rapt attention from the right person at the very beginning, one can assuredly see Lord Krishna in person in the pages of Bhagavatam.
Wow.
So this is the idea of hearing. And so
we'll maybe pause for a minute and see if people have any comments or questions about this important aspect of our practice, which is hearing.
And then we'll continue on. Maybe there's something in chat, if you can check. Yes. There is that coal basket story. I think we mentioned that earlier, how this boy, he thinks that, he tells him that go, get water in a coal basket. And the basket is so dirty. And then he goes and he comes back, and based on what has been said in this lesson, does the Krishna consciousness movement recognize a bhakti light for people who are not ready to commit to the full set of regulative principles required of initiates? Are there certain behaviors that completely negate the benefits of chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, studying the sacred texts, and listening to the teachings of these texts? Such a good question. Yes, bhakti is bhakti, light or heavy. So when Prabhupada first came here, there were no requirement. The only requirement was that one just finds some taste, some connection, some attraction, and by the power of that connection, that attraction, then all these other things will automatically happen in due course of time. So unlike the other yoga practices where you start out with all these principles, in bhakti we simply start with attraction for Krishna. And Prabhupada's whole approach was so magnanimous and liberal. He even said that even if an alcoholic, right, while he's drinking his alcohol, if he thinks that this is the taste of Krishna, then he will make some spiritual progress. Not that it's recommended, but if that's where one is, then there is, nothing can stop the flow of bhakti. Right?
At the same time, one who is practicing, as we gradually practice, we will see that we lose taste, and then we try to avoid those things that are counter to our bhakti. And I guess the most important one is criticism.
Yeah.
Criticism of others and criticism of people, of anybody actually.
Yeah, just that. But other than that, no, Eric, I think there is absolutely nothing that can stop. And even if it is possible that it may, if you follow the principles, then the progress will be that much quicker and swifter. But at the same time, it definitely does not negate it. There is a story like that where Prabhupada had a disciple, Shyama Sundar, and he was initiated, but he still liked to smoke, once in a while or whatever. So he was carving these deities of Lord Jagannath for Prabhupada, and Prabhupada came and saw him, and he saw that he had, something in his hand. And so because he was embarrassed, so he put that on a little piece of wood while he spoke to Prabhupada. And as Prabhupada noticed it, as Prabhupada was leaving, he just turned towards Shyam Sundar Prabhu, and he didn't really say anything to him. He just said that, don't let something as small as this, and he used his finger, he said, don't let something as small as this come between you and Krishna. So all of these different habits that we carry, they're very small and insignificant compared to the power of bhakti. And so if we simply just keep trying and keep doing our bhakti practices, then rest assured that all these other things which are superfluous to us will automatically go away. Right? So I don't know if that helps, Eric, but
yeah, I just remember about a colleague of my wife who was from India and who attended the Potomac Temple from time to time. And I remember visiting his house for a party, and he was serving alcohol, and I said, "Oh, are you allowed to drink alcohol?" And he said, "Well, I observe some principles and not some other principles, but I just hope that my heart will guide me in the right direction. And then when I saw him a few years later, he said that he had given up alcohol, which
Yeah.
surprised me. So yeah, it is something that I guess happens slowly over time.
Yeah, it is. And I think allowing ourselves that space to grow. And that's kind of one thing that we would like to encourage everyone, that, find your space. And we are here to assist, assist everyone. And, and we want to make this a judgment-free zone where people can feel that they have that space and their time without judgment to make their spiritual progress. And I think that's really, really important, because it's not an overnight journey.
Yeah.
Thank you, Delia, for sharing that. And yeah, we all have different habits that, that we struggle with, and that this is the process. And it's not something that, in due course of time, Bhakti Vinod Thakur, who's another great devotee in our line, a very, very magnanimous person, he says, nothing is pure in the beginning. From imperfection, perfection will come about.
Purity will come about.
From purity will come about. Yeah. So
As we get more and more attached to Krishna and addict, our process, bhakti is about getting addicted to Krishna. And then all the other things that we have that are unwanted, they will slowly leave us. They won't find us appealing. We don't have to give them up, they will give us up.
yeah, they do. They really do. I mean, I can share my own, little tiny story. I mean, there's so many stories that in the beginning, I had my own, and I still do. I have my own things I was holding on to. And one of the things, I was newly married, and, I used to love my cup of coffee. And every morning I would just wake up and make my coffee. And over a period of time, I didn't give it up. Just one day, just kind of like, I realized that I was leaving, half a cup, and then 1/4 of the cup was just getting wasted. And one day I realized, hey, why am I going through this big trouble, right? Just to take one sip. And so it happens very, very naturally. Yeah, I think, yes, Amrita, the important thing is not to let it be a hindrance to what we want to attain in our spiritual journey. Yeah, these are very, these are definitely not things that that can get in the way. It's like, I don't know if you guys, I mean, we were just at Shenandoah today, and we were just amazed, like, oh my goodness, such a beautiful, we went on this hike, and the water is just gushing, right? And it's going in such a strong current. And you can see that, the small twigs and different things, they just get swept away in the force of that current. So in the same way, this process itself sweeps all these things away, Yeah, after I joined Krishna consciousness, trying so hard to give up non-vegetarian food. Thank you. I mean, I really appreciate you guys finding it a safe environment where you can share all your struggles. Yeah, and we've all gone through the same journey, and I can assure you that we're still going through, trying to. So this is this is a marathon, and we want to grow and be aware of, yes, I want to get to a higher level, but
And there's many of our habits are gross habits, and then many of them are subtle in the mind. So we all take our time to give up things which are not conducive to our bhakti at the gross level and then at the subtle level. And the hardest to give up is described as the desire for prestige and honor and respect. That's the hardest to give up.
yeah, the gross things go off. Yeah, Delia, it's just positive changes. And I think that's one of the reasons why one of the greatest bhakti teachers in our line, Rupa Goswami, he talks about 3 principles which are absolutely critical for development on the path of bhakti. So the first one he describes as being utsaha, which means enthusiasm. So when we first come, we say, oh my goodness, this is amazing, I want to do everything, right? And so, but then we are not able to. So then we need the second quality, which is determination, nishchaya. But then along with those 2 things, we need a third quality, which is kind of interesting. So almost seems paradoxically opposite to utsaha or enthusiasm, which is patience. Like just taking a deep breath and saying, the journey that we have come has been much greater than the journey that we have to make, right? So we've come a long way already, and
We have to be patient with ourselves.
we have to be patient with ourselves and compassionate to ourselves. Yes. The fact that we are more aware of our choices now says a lot about how much we have all progressed. Yes, allowing ourselves some grace too. Absolutely. And Krishna is a very patient friend. He knows us through and through, right? He's sitting in our heart. So he knows us, and he works with us. Otherwise, I can tell you, both of us would not be here either. So, we are our life is a testimonial to the fact that there is room for all kinds.
There's a verse in Bhagavatam. It says, Shrinatam Swakatha Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hirdiyantasto hi Abhadrani Vidinoti Suhit Satam. So which basically means that if you hear about Krishna every day, it is very auspicious, and then what Krishna does as a sweeper, he basically sweeps our heart, and then all the unwanted things he basically sweeps away. He does the job of the sweeper, and it sweeps away all the unwanted things from our heart. So all we have to do is keep our ears open to Krishna, and then everything will manifest automatically.
Let's see. Allowing ourselves some grace too. So better to listen to the BG audiobook than no. It's the same thing. Reading is the same as hearing. Very nice point, Delhi. Actually, thank you for bringing that out. The reading is actually a spoken word, so it's also hearing. Yeah. So there's no difference. No difference at all.
And then reading sometimes is even better than listening directly, depending on what time of the day we are doing it. Reading forces us to ponder and think about and go deeper into the subject.
And the best kind of reading is when you do it with others.
Yeah.
That is considered the best kind of reading. Yeah. How do we know which of our habits are good and which are bad for the spiritual journey? Very nice, Tarun. And I think there are, just like when we talked about Ashtanga Yoga, there are yamas and niyamas. So, like, I'm a movie buff. Is it good or bad for spiritual journey? So right now, what we would recommend is not to get hung up, not to worry too much about, but this probably has to go. It'll happen. It's better to focus on the positive things. And in general, sometimes we have shown clips of movies here, Chronicles of Narnia, Matrix, so many movies, right? So it all depends. You can use, there are good movies and there are bad movies, there are spiritual movies and maybe not so spiritual. These are not things we should worry about. There are 4 principles that we follow. We don't eat meat. We don't engage in any kind of addiction or intoxication. We don't gamble, and we don't engage in any kind of illicit sexual activity. So those are 4 principles we follow. But again, those are things that will come on its own. So there's no need to feel any pressure or guilt or any kind of, I'm not there yet. It takes time.
So no onion, garlic too, or just vegetarian?
Like I said, don't worry about these things.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it right now. Just do what you can. Yes, when you really want to get into the whole, discipline of bhakti yoga, so then we do avoid onion and garlic. That is correct. Anybody else? Anything? Any question? Let's see. Amber, did you have any thoughts? Yes, Juma. Feed the fox only, the positives. The negatives will vanish. Absolutely. You heard that, That was good hearing. That's all we are supposed to do.
Yes, Prabhu. Regarding addictions, a cigarette, alcohol, these are petty things. And if addiction to them affects our life, addiction to Krishna, Bhakti is addiction to Krishna.
Yes.
If small things affect our life, addiction to Krishna affects everything. So we need not worry about these small petty things.
Yes. Very nice. Very
Right
nice.
on the dot.
Right on the dot. Yeah.
Addiction to Krishna is like watering the root, and that good water will go into every aspect of our life.
You'll forget everything else.
Yeah.
It's like a bigger intoxication. Like when Prabhupada first came and he got a flyer made. And of course, back in those days, people were taking LSD and different things. So his flyer said, "Stay high forever." So that was the flyer. So the idea being that, hey, you want to experience a high. This is the best way to
Because
experience.
what would happen is these drug addicts, they would take LSD and the drugs at night, and then they would achieve some kind of a high, but then by the morning they would come crashing down in such a bad way that the people had to actually drag them out of parks or benches or roads, and And then many of them would end up in the temple, because in the temple they would get like fresh hot prasadam and khichdi and things like that. That would help them to come out of their drug. So Prabhupada said, why take a drug and then go up and then come down again? Better you stay high forever.
By chanting, yeah, chanting, yeah. Thank you, Amber. I'm so happy to hear that you liked the Beyond Meat burger. I'm so happy to hear that. And one of these days, maybe we'll ship you our vegan hot dog. You can share that with your family. There's a whole world out there. You know, we do these vegan festivals. Oh my goodness, you know. There's everything. They're even making this like something out of jackfruit now, which is they say that it has a very strong meaty texture and all that. So yeah, this is a good universe to kind of research and learn about and try different things. If the power of material energy is much less than the power of bhakti yoga, then why does our attachment to material energy slow our spiritual journey?
See, the power of material energy is in one sense it is not less. The power, because material energy also Krishna's energy, right? So it can become as big as we want it to be in one sense. If we are attached to it, the material energy can overpower anybody. And for Krishna, there is no difference between his material energy and spiritual energy. It is one energy for him, right? Just like Prabhupada gives the example for a person, electrician, he can use the electricity for cooling and heating because he knows how to use it for either purpose. So the material energy can overpower us because our free will is our living entity is very tiny. So the material energy can completely overpower us.
Actually, that is the discussion of the next section.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, what are the different kinds of energies? What is their relationship? So why, so yeah.
We'll talk about tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Look at that, actually I had full plan today to finish this whole section. But I think this was a very, very good discussion.
Jackfruit.
We make plans. God makes his own plans.
Exactly. So I think, but this is good, slow is good.
But your question is very good, Divakar. We'll address it tomorrow.
We'll address it tomorrow, yeah.
I have a reflection about hearing.
Yeah.
Yes.
And listening, that I think it's very common for us as people sometimes we'll hear something and we think we're listening, but really what we're taking in through our ears and our mind, we're putting it into our own mental molds. So we're not really hearing what the message is. We're like hearing the sounds and then we're transforming it into what we want to hear. And it's really important to make sure we're really listening, like taking ourselves out of the equation when we're trying to hear something.
Such a good point.
That is hearing in the mode of goodness, actually. When we are not consumed by our own thoughts, our own agenda, questions.
So the thing which resonates with me the most today is if this person is sleeping, the only person to wake him up by hearing. So simple thought, but tells us the importance of the hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.